The Carolina Hurricanes had one of the more successful off seasons, according to most experts. Jared Ellis of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes joins us to talk about that and to preview training camp. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And you can now also hear us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes, Jared Ellis. And Jared, the Canes winning the Metropolitan Division last year, getting a playoff series win, but coming up just short again to the ultimate goal. A lot of people feel that this was a very successful offseason for the Hurricanes. What is the key to them taking that next step and reaching a Stanley Cup Final?
Thanks for having me again, Gil. Always a pleasure to talk. I would say really the next step, honestly, for them is just to keep their offense going in the playoffs. That's kind of been their Achilles heel the past few years, really, not just this past year. And they're very much giving the keys to their guys, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, those guys. And those guys, they're continuing to progress. And one thing I do try to remind myself and other folks is that these guys are still super, super young. Andre is college age. I think he's like 23 years old. Sebastian Aho is, I believe, like 26 or something like that. So these are still really young guys, and they're obviously still developing. They haven't really even entered their prime yet. So they're really focusing on getting those guys there and building a team around them to help them succeed. And they really did that this offseason. Their blue line is absolutely stacked, going to be one of, if not the best defensive team in the league yet again this year. So that's going to be really fun to watch. Obviously, you're bringing back the same goaltending tandem of Freddie Anderson onto Ronta, and then you have Pyotr Kochetkov waiting in the wings as well. A bit of an interesting move, bringing back both Anderson and Ronta, though not surprised in terms of how they staggered the deals with Anderson doing a 2-year, Ronta a 1. So, kind of give Kochetkov another year to really get acclimated to the North American game and really get him ready to be that successor following this coming season. After that, that's when you can kind of figure you'll have that Anderson Kochetkov tandem.
Now, offense, as you mentioned, seems to be the issue in the playoffs. And this is one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. What can Rob Brind'Amour and company do to get this team past that, that last hurdle and make the offense just a little more consistent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I keep saying it. It feels like year after year at this point. They need to add, that goal scorer, and someone that you can really depend on to get your offense going. You remember back right before Matthew Tkachuk got traded down to Florida, the Hurricanes were one of the teams in the mix. I believe they were number 2, given it's been a hot minute now, but. Getting someone like that, I feel, is really that next step to get them past the conference final into the Stanley Cup final. I think that's the biggest thing. And I totally understand them wanting to, stick with their guys and, not have to rely on bringing this guy in, that guy in to get you to that next level. But it does feel like they're still missing that one piece. And right now, with them having such a defensive logjam on the blue line right now, it does feel like they have pieces to spare in terms of another trade, whether it still be in the offseason or something, before the trade deadline of acquiring that goal scorer. I really feel that is like the one thing that they really, really need to get them to that next level because, don't get me wrong, depth scoring is always great. Like Jordan Martinook having that series against New Jersey in the second round, that kind of thing is always great. Nobody's going to complain about when you have a third or fourth liner step up and just go off offensively. No one's going to complain about that. But on a consistent game to game basis, they do need that goal scorer that can provide that spark when Aho is running a bit dry, when Fetch is running a bit dry. They need that one more piece. We still haven't heard anything about Elias Lindholm trade. Maybe they decide to bring him back to Raleigh. Is just no telling, but I do feel that that is the one thing that they need to do. Given we still got training camp, preseason, first half of the regular season, who knows if there is that person on the roster already that takes that next step, whether it's someone I've already mentioned or whether it's someone else. Who knows? It's something we can only just wait and see. You can't fast forward time. We don't have, one of those Men in Black things, where we can fast forward anything like that. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, just that one offensive piece is really just that last thing that could take them over the edge.
I know this team, the lineup is more or less set, but are there any prospects in training camp that people should keep an eye on who have a realistic chance of getting some ice time this year with the big club?
So that's going to be really, really interesting just to see how that goes around. I haven't really had a chance to take a look at the the prospect showcase roster yet. That just got announced yesterday as of recording. So I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but really there's no names that really jump out at me. I do kind of feel like the ones, the ones that you think are going to be there are going to be the ones that are there. I really don't see any surprises this training camp, like we saw over the past couple years with like Seth Jarvis forcing their hand, Steph Nazin, Jalen Chatfield. I really don't see another guy like that this training camp. I'd love to be wrong. I'd absolutely love to be wrong here. But as of right now, not really a whole lot of names jumping out at me. And plus, now who knows what they're going to do when it comes to guys moving up and down between the AHL and the NHL, because they don't have an affiliation thing right now so, of any kind, whether it be their own team, whether they're sharing a team, or just a plan in place that the public have been made aware of. They've been pretty tight-lipped on all of that stuff, so we don't even know if like, oh, hey, they're getting close to sharing, I don't know, San Diego with Anaheim or anything like that. Just don't know right now, but I do think that is going to play a factor in this training camp as far as who's gonna go where, because as of right now they really don't have anywhere to send anyone. Yeah, you can send like your European players overseas to play over there, but you're not gonna get those guys back if you send them. It's not gonna be till after those leagues' respective seasons. So the guys that are going to be staying over here in North America, that's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, as far as any names for training camp, no one's really popping out at me right now. I'd love to see Ryan Suzuki do something in training camp. He's kind of been that guy at this point where he's been in the Hurricane system for so long now. It's really getting to that. Obviously, I know he's fought a lot of injuries, but it is getting to that point where like a lot of folks are starting to pass him by. I'd really like to see him make some progress, maybe be a guy that, so-and-so goes down during the season, he gets a call up, because I've said many times, guys are passing him by when that happens. He's not the guy getting the call of like, hey, we need you to come to Raleigh, or we need you to come to wherever it may be. He's not getting that call. I'd like to see him do something in training camp and preseason, but aside, from that, really no one's jumping out at me as of this moment. Given training camp can happen, the prospect showcase can happen, someone really shows out, things change, but as of right now, no one's really jumping out at me.
All right, Jared, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find the podcast wherever you are listening to Locked On NHL, whether it be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SiriusXM. Locked On Hurricanes is going to be on there. And you can also find the show on YouTube, Locked On Hurricanes, and on social media at LO_Hurricanes, and then myself at Jared Ellis _96.
Jared, thank you so much for doing this. Always a pleasure talking hockey with you.
Always a pleasure.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season has gotten underway, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory all season long. You could use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and a lot more. And it doesn't matter what team you bet on. Anytime they win, you get bonus bets. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Check it out today.